We've got a 2-for-1 this week in the exercise of the week. We are looking at hands overhead lunges, and we're going to start with a classic you're probably very familiar with, the reverse lunge with an arm swing to overhead. So the goal is to step nice and far back, knee close to the floor, hand swinging up and overhead, big stretch through the whole anterior chain. So most people will feel it quads, hip flexors, maybe some abs, maybe even some lats as we go into this nice overhead position. So we're getting a big stretch, forming that nice backwards C shape here, and this will help identify where might be tight in that anterior chain, for example, the hip flexors. And by doing it in this way, when we go arm swing with the step back together, we call this loading the anterior chain by opposites. So that means both ends of these muscles are getting stretched at the same time, so that mobility stimulus is strongest and we're asking for the most length in the least amount of time. Imagine stretching a rubber band from both ends at the same time versus just one end or the other. We're getting double the amount of stretch in the same amount of time. So this will be a very strong stretch, and if you're tight anywhere in this anterior chain, you're probably going to feel it very soon, and it might actually be a little bit too much for some people to get a meaningful mobility stimulus because the body feels threatened, so it's going to shut down that range of motion. So if you're feeling very restricted when you go into this movement, your knee's not able to go very low, your knee doesn't really go behind the hip, or you feel like you can't really open up in the upper body, then we're going to look at another way to achieve a similar stimulus. And this is just with a forward lunge with any hand overhead variation. So we're using mixed rack here, but you could equally go with both hands overhead. And what we're doing is essentially fixing the upper body in this nice upright position, using some load or just through hands overhead. So we don't have the option to fold forwards into flexion in the upper body, which some people will do in a forward lunge, but then stepping forward. So this is just a top down load for the quads, mainly rec fem here, as it's getting lengthened from the top end and the bottom at the same time. And we're also still lengthened through the upper body, maybe not as much as the full back bend variation, but the key thing for this is that it's driven by the step forwards. So that means the pelvis moves first on this right leg, which is where we're getting most of the stretch. So we get length through that rec fem from the hip, from the pelvis, then down into the knee. And because we're staying relatively constant through the abs, we still get a stretch here, but it's not going to be as intense or as severe because we're not lengthening it more at the same time and getting that opposites loading, which can be a reason why people struggle to get into better range of motion because we're just asking too much from them right now. Something to work towards in future, but one thing to think about that can be the difference between getting a good stimulus out of this versus front leg loading is think about staying on the back leg as long as possible. So as you step, we're thinking about keeping our weight back on top of this foot and driving both hips forwards as far as you can before you land this foot. So we're getting a lot of length and controlling the movement with the back leg before we then descend into the front foot and get the most out of this stretch position. A lot of people will fold forwards, as I said earlier, and dump weight into the forward leg only, effectively deloading the hip flexors and the quads here, which might be a target stimulus. You see a lot of people nowadays with tight hip flexors and tight quads, and this is a great way to counteract them. You can do this as a walking lunge as well, but the main thing is that we're driving length through these muscles from the swing leg. Imagine if you were walking or running, this would be the swing leg traveling through space, sending this side of the pelvis forwards and sending both of the hips forwards in space, which creates the hip extension to go with the knee flexion, which creates a lot of length through this leg. So this is a key concept we have at the Training Stimulus, tweaking in and tweaking out. So by keeping the upper body constant with the overhead reach, we are in length, but we're not asking for more length as we go through the movement like we were with the reverse lunge. So this is just a subtle way we can tweak the exercise, which can mean the difference between getting the target stimulus of anterior hip length or mobility versus not getting the stimulus because it is just too much too soon. Give both these a go, feel the difference between those subtle changes in execution, particularly driving this one from the hips and staying on the back leg, and it gives you a totally different feeling to just the normal way of dumping weight onto the front leg and powering through your walking lunges like a lot of people do in CrossFit competitions or Hyrox competitions, for example. But that's it for this week, guys. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. And as ever, if there are any exercises you'd like to see covered or problems you'd like to see addressed through a good movement mechanics exercise, please do let me know and we'll add it to the queue for exercises of the week in future. But otherwise, thanks for your time. Have a great day. Speak to you next week.